Look at that pathetic little thing. Why would I ever choose that when I can have this? This is the one. This is what we truly deserve. This will make Ugo's treasure look like pebbles. I wish to go home with my treasure.
The next morning arrived, harsh and bright. In the silent compound, a different kind of preparation was underway. Nneka, her grief now forged into a blade of bitter purpose, dressed her surviving daughter with furious precision. She wrapped Chidi in her finest, most expensive George wrapper, a vibrant cascade of crimson and gold, and a stiff, lace-trimmed blouse. She braided Chidi's hair with impatient hands, threading through it expensive coral beads that clicked like settling bones. This was not a farewell, it was a deployment. "Stand straight," Nneka commanded, her voice low and sharp. Her grip Chidi's shoulders, her eyes burning, not with tears, but with the same feverish intensity from the night before. "You are not a lost lamb, you are a hunter now. Go into that cursed place and take back what was stolen from us." At the very edge of the forest, where the sunlit compound yielded to the cool green shadow, Nneka stopped. Unlike Ugo's departure, witnessed by a hopeful village, this was a private, desperate transaction. With a final, forceful look, Nneka shoved a small, sharp knife into Chidi's hand, folding her daughter's fingers tightly around the bone handle. "Be brave, be clever. Do not let any old witch fool you with pity or weakness," she hissed, the words a venomous spell. "You find that spirit, you look it in the eye, and you demand what is ours." Then she gave Chidi a hard push between the shoulder blades, propelling her from the world of mothers and daughters into the world of spirits and bargains. Chidi stumbled into the forest embrace, her heart a clenched fist of her mother's fury and her own sharp-edged greed. Where Ugo had felt wonder, Chidi felt only a clawing oppression. The air was too close, the cacophony of insects and insult. Thorns like grasping fingers immediately snagged the delicate threads of her delicate wrapper. "Stupid forest, this is all Ugo's fault." She stomped along, making no attempt to be quiet. When she reached the clearing, she saw the Oduma just as Ugo had, struggling with the same heavy basket of garden eggs. The old woman looked up. "My daughter, can you help an old woman?" Chidi stopped. She looked the creature up and down, her lip curling in undisguised disgust. This frail, dirty thing was the great test? This was the mighty forest spirit that had cowed her sister? Contempt washed over her fear, leaving only a cold, calculating certainty. "Help you? Do you know who I am? I am not your pack animal. Carry your own basket, old hag." She began to march past, but then she remembered her mother's words. Follow her path. This must be part of it, she thought. With a dramatic put-upon sigh, she turned back. "Fine, give it to me, but be quick about it. I haven't gotten all day." She carried the basket, complaining loudly the entire way to the hut about the weight and the heat. At the hut, she did nothing. When the Oduma asked for water, Chidi rolled her eyes. When she was asked to sweep, she pretended not to hear.
Why?
She expected to be
Am I your
served,
servant?
to be given the treasure for merely showing up. When they went to the magical farm, the Oduma gave her the same instruction, her voice grave. "You may eat to regain your strength, but you must only eat one of the purple garden eggs. No more." Yes, Chidi waved a dismissive hand, her eyes already greedily scanning the glowing fruits. "Only one?" Chidi muttered to herself with a scornful laugh. What a stupid, selfish rule. The old miser probably wants to keep them all for herself.
She plucked one and devoured it. It was incredible, a burst of flavor and energy. The deprivation of a lifetime, the greed instilled by her mother took over. One was not enough. It could never be enough. She plucked another and another. She ate not to satisfy hunger, but to conquer, to consume. She ate until her stomach was painfully distended, juice staining her chin and hands, the empty stems littering the ground around her. When the Oduma returned, her face was unreadable. She asked, "My daughter, how many of the purple garden eggs did you eat each day?"
My daughter.
Chidi,
How many of
patting
the
her
golden
bloated
garden eggs
stomach,
did you eat each
looked
day?
the ancient woman directly in her milky eyes
Only one,
and lied without
as
a
you said.
flicker of remorse. "Only one, just as you said." The Oduma's form seemed to grow, her shadow stretching long and dark. The air grew cold. The Oduma did not say anything. She just produced the same dark broom, but this time there was no gentle tap. She swung it, not to harm, but to reveal. She brought the bristles down upon Chidi's back and shoulders with a series of sharp thwacks. And with each strike, a miracle of horror occurred. From Chidi's mouth, from the sleeves of her blouse, from under her wrapper, the purple garden eggs she had stolen and hidden began to fall. They tumbled onto the earth, one after another, a shameful, glowing torrent of her gluttony and deceit. They rolled around her feet, a damning testimony to her lie. There were not 2 or 3, but dozens. Chidi stared at the evidence of her sin, her face pale with shock and humiliation. The Oduma, had justice delivered, pointed a bony finger. "Now, listen closely," the Oduma instructed. "On your journey home, you will find 2 paths. One is short, broad, and bathed in tempting light. The other is long, narrow, and choked with thorns. You must take the long, narrow path. At its end, you will find a hut. Inside, 2 clay pots await. One is large, ornate, and gleams with false promise. The other is small, plain, and humble. You must take the small, plain pot." Chidi was not paying attention to the old lady's instructions. In her mind, she was already visualizing the goodies she would be bringing home and the grand welcoming. The Oduma leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. "Do not open it. Hold it close. Speak your deepest wish into its silence, and you will find your way home." And with that, the old woman vanished into the forest, leaving Chidi alone, surrounded by the fallen fruit, her fine clothes now feeling like a shroud. Chidi stood alone in the clearing, the purple garden eggs lying at her feet like accusations. Humiliation burned hotter than any fire within her. The old woman's words echoed in her mind. "Take the long, narrow one. Take the small pot." But as the initial shock faded, it was quickly replaced by a surge of defiant rage. Who was that senile old crone to command her, to humiliate her like this? She kicked at the purple garden eggs, scattering them into the undergrowth. Stupid old witch! You just want to keep the best treasure for yourself. You gave Ugo everything because she acted like a meek little slave. Well, I am not a slave. I know what I deserve. The instructions felt like a punishment, a trick designed to keep her from the real reward. The long, narrow path? Why would anyone choose hardship when there was an easier way? The small pot? It was an insult. The big one obviously held more treasure. It was simple logic. Filled with a sense of her own superior cleverness, Chidi stomped away from the clearing.
When she came to the fork in the path, she didn't even pause. The short, broad road was sunny and inviting. The long, narrow one was dark and choked with thorns. Only a fool would choose that, she sneered, and confidently strode down the short, easy path. It was just as pleasant as it looked. The walking was easy and she made quick progress, her smugness growing with every step. Soon enough, she arrived at the hut identical to the one Ugo had described. Her heart hammered with anticipation now, not fear. She pushed the door open. There, on a pedestal, sat the 2 clay pots. The large one was magnificent, intricately carved and gleaming as if dusted with gold. The small one was plain, brown and unremarkable. Chidi laughed out loud. "Look at that pathetic little thing," she said to herself, striding towards the large pot. "Why would I ever choose that when I can have this?" She ran her hands over the ornate carvings on the large pot, her greed swelling. "This is the one. This is what we truly deserve. This will make Ugo's treasure look like pebbles." She hugged the large, heavy pot to her chest, a triumphant, greedy smile plastered on her face. "I wish to go home with my treasure," she shouted, not whispering a gentle wish, but demanding her due. A flash of dark purple light enveloped her. The world dissolved in a nauseating lurch. Back in the compound, Nneka was a bundle of nervous energy. She had been pacing since dawn. When the familiar dark flash erupted in the center of the compound, she let out a shriek of pure joy. She did it! My brilliant daughter! But her joy faltered for a second as the light cleared. Chidi stood there, but she was disheveled. Her fine clothes were now dirty rags, and she looked diminished. Yet, she was clutching the most enormous, beautifully decorated clay pot Nneka had ever seen. It was twice the size of Ugo's. Nneka's momentary concern was swept away by a tidal wave of avarice. "You see? You see!" she screamed, not caring who had. She rushed forward and dragged Chidi toward the main house. "I knew you were the superior one. Now we are rich, richer than that Ugo will ever be." She glared triumphantly at Ugo and Chike, who had emerged from the hut at the commotion. "This is for our side of the family," Nneka shrieked. "Do not come in, do not even look at it." She pulled Chidi inside their room and slammed the door shut, bolting it and pushing a heavy chest against it for good measure. She closed the wooden shutters on the window, plunging the room into a dim, stuffy gloom. The only light came from a single small palm oil lamp. "Now, my child, open it," Nneka urged, her eyes wide and gleaming with madness. "Open it and let us bathe in our fortune. Let us count the jewels that will be yours." Chidi, still riding the high of her perceived victory, grinned. She set the heavy pot on the floor with a thud. She looked at her mother, her expression one of greedy anticipation. "Ready, Mama?" "Yes, yes, do it!" With a final triumphant heave, Chidi pried open the heavy ornate lid. There was no golden light, no soft radiance. Instead, a terrifying, sibilant sss filled the air, loud and menacing in the confined space. For a split second, nothing happened. Then a sinuous black shape erupted from the pot, followed by another and another. Not treasure, but a monstrous, seething swarm of venomous snakes, their scales glistening in the lamplight, their forked tongues tasting the air filled with the scent of greed. Giant black scorpions scuttled out, their curved stingers poised. A cloud of angry, buzzing bees filled the air, their humming a terrifying dirge. The creatures, manifestations of the curse they had brought upon themselves, did not hesitate. They engulfed mother and daughter in a living, vengeful cloud. Nneka's scream of triumph became a blood-curdling shriek of pure terror.
Chidi's greedy smile twisted into a mask of agony. "Mama, help me!" Chidi screamed as a snake struck her leg. "Get them off! Get them off!" Nneka wailed, frantically batting at the scorpions crawling up her wrapper. Their screams were short, frantic, and utterly horrifying to those listening outside. The room shook with the sounds of their thrashing and the relentless hissing and buzzing. Then, abruptly, the screams were cut off, replaced by a sudden, profound, and chilling silence. Outside, the village stood frozen. Chike had rushed to the door, his face ashen. "Chidi, what have they done?" he whispered. Ugo stood silently, her face filled with a profound sadness. She had feared this. She knew the forest blessing was not a transaction, but a judgment. After a long, tense moment, Chike and some of the bravest village men pushed the chest aside and unbolted the door. They pushed it open cautiously. The sight that met them would be etched into the village's memory for generations. Nneka and Chidi lay on the floor, still, their bodies bearing the marks of the venomous creatures which had now vanished as mysteriously as they had appeared. The large, ornate clay pot lay on its side, empty and dark. The faces of mother and daughter were forever frozen in a terrified, agonized expression of the horror they had sown, a perfect portrait of greed meeting its end. A year of peace settled over Chike's compound. The shadow of Nneka and Chidi was gone, with a somber lesson that hung in the air. The treasure Ugo had brought was not hoarded. She became the village's generous heart, ensuring no one went hungry, that the sick were taken care of, and that the less fortunate shared in the compound's abundance. The village flourished under this ripple effect of kindness. Kene, who had never wavered in Ugo's spirit, now courted her openly and with the full blessing of both families. Their wedding was the greatest celebration Umua had ever seen, not for its extravagance, but for the palpable joy and hope it represented. One evening, Ugo sat with her father on a new bench outside their home. The compound was tidy and prosperous, filled with the gentle sounds of contented life. Chike's eyes, once hollow with grief, were now clear and calm. He placed a gnarled hand over his daughter's. "You brought more than treasure back from that forest, my child. You brought us back to life." Ugo smiled, leaning her head on his shoulder. She looked out towards the distant dark line of the forest, no longer a place of fear, but a reminder. The forest does not give its blessing because it is asked, Father. It gives because of the heart that asks. A cruel heart will always find a curse, but a kind heart, no matter how battered, will always find its way home. And in the warm setting sun, surrounded by peace and love, the truth of her words settled deep into the red earth of Umua, a story to be told for generations to come. And so, the tale of Ugo and Chidi reaches its end, a timeless reminder that the forest and life itself mirror what we carry inside. If this story of kindness, envy, and consequence moved you, please subscribe to our channel and share this video. Spreading this tale is a kind act in itself. Turn on notifications so you never miss another story from the heart of Africa. This has been Echoes of Africa by Temi. Until next time, carry kindness in your heart.